Internet, and welcome to a righteously violent episode of Junk Film Review. So previously we've ripped a little hole into Pureflix, a Christian alternative to Netflix, and gave its creator David A.R. White a bit of a spanking for his terrible writing, awful acting, shameless thievery of other creators' ideas, and his aggressive abuse of other people's faith to selfishly inject millions of dollars into his own bank account. He's at the forefront of new media's evangelical con artistry and paving the way for any future faith vultures that fancy viciously ripping off well-natured do-gooders over the internet. We looked at a variety of his work and came to the conclusion that it was of poor quality and that he should feel suitably ashamed. I personally had considered the topic covered and decided to move on with my life, but despite my best efforts to ignore him, he's recently released a new movie that has pushed me to the edge. I can't not talk about it. And this time, David A.R. White is bigger, badder, more budget, and more blessed than ever before. And he set his sights on the action blockbuster behemoth John Wick and has decided to steal the premise of this movie and create his own low-grade, exhausting, Bible-bashing alternative. Although surprisingly this time, David didn't fancy doing absolutely everything himself, and I guess that's a choice we must commend him for, as in the past he's tried to wear all of the movie-making hats of producer, writer, director, actor, the list goes on. It's really annoying. Choose a thing you want to concentrate on, but it would appear he's starting to learn from his past mistakes and has delegated these new responsibilities to other person. Yes, it's still one person to fulfill the responsibility of writer, cinematographer, director, and editor. But at least this means David can focus on his true passion of always being the hero in everything and saving the day. And everyone loves him and he's great. Massive narcissist. This time, David A.R. White is Beckman, a deadly, vicious, spiteful super assassin turned priest who's desperately trying to repent for a life of mostly murdering people and has turned in his guns and picked up a Bible because nobody is beyond forgiveness and even contract killers are allowed to go to heaven if they say sorry. Wow, what a compelling premise. I bet this is going to be an exhilarating action roller coaster. The movie has this tangible weirdness to it that makes me feel like I've been drilled in the head. The acting is so overly melodramatic that it feels sarcastic and unnatural. It feels like one of those movies that exist inside other movies where the acting has been deliberately hammed up to give it a sense of irony, except this isn't a fake movie inside another movie. It's genuinely a real movie that exists inside of our world and people are expected to pay to watch it. The film wastes no time at all throwing us into the action as we watch a rather floppily choreographed fight between our beautiful blonde hero Beckman and an unnamed assailant. After exchanging a few lethargic blows, Beckman whips his lang out and gats the man down, grabbing the cliche duffel bag of cash and fleeing, pursued by some angry voices. This scene is overlaid with a monologue in which Beckman expresses his desire to get out and leave behind this life filled with shady garage fistfights and guts full of bullets. And it is here, at his lowest point, that Beckman's prayers are answered. Literally. He rushes over to the church, slamming on the door, and is greeted by the priest, who is also the king of barbecue sauce himself, Jeff Fahey. Beckman begs Jeff for help and offers his massive bag of criminal cash as a generous donation to the church. Obviously knowing that this money was acquired illegitimately, Jeff does what any honest, God-fearing man would do and immediately disposes of the ill-gotten wonga, not wanting to benefit from the suffering of others. Just kidding, he takes a sizable percentage of the money for himself and then burns the rest because fuck helping anyone else out. So thanks to that lovely big bag of crime money, the church can stay open and pay all its bills, and Mr. Barbecue Sauce baptizes Beckman, washing away all the guilt for murdering tons of people. And then the budget for Jeff Fahey clearly ran out as he slowly dies of cancer over the course of the next 20 seconds, and he's gone. Not entirely sure how the hiring process works in churches, but rather than the ministry sending over a new priest after Jeff Fahey completed his one day of filming, Beckman just kind of takes over. I am the priest now. I mean, that's fine. We can leave the sermons up to Beckman. He's not a murderer anymore. He promised to stop killing everyone, so sure he can run this church, no problem. I mean, his sermons are pretty trash. He clearly just talks in analogies about his own past sins to a really unimpressed congregation of extras, but he's not under any kind of illusion conclusion that he's doing a good job and decides that he needs to leave after talking with Churchgoer 3 for a minute about his bad dreams. In order to reason with Beckman and appear relatable, Churchgoer 3 decides to share some insight into her own sordid past.
I have known my share of men.
Okay, nobody asked. But before Churchgoer 3 can get to know more men, or Beckman has an opportunity to kill again, this interaction is interrupted by a knock at the door. It's Mr. Barbecue Sauce's niece, Tabitha, played by Brighton Charbino, who manages to achieve the incredible feat of being the worst actor in this movie.
Your uncle died almost a year ago.
And given the calibre of the competition, this is quite the achievement. Well done. And it's at this point that even the movie's own title cards are fed up of the plot. Another year later. It just sounds like it's so sick of itself. Oh, another year later. When is the story actually going to start? The creators seem to think they can just skip over character development or relationship building with these nifty little cards, forget writing any kind of compelling dialogue or situations that uncover new depth to these characters. Let's just fast track that with a little title card, and we'll have them go from looking at each other with concern to looking at each other with fondness. Wasn't that a relatable experience? I now truly care about the plight of these people after sharing such poignant moments with them, like that time when they first met, and the time with the title card, and then the time where they were smiling and stuff. Ah, such fond memories. I sure hope nothing untoward happens to any of them. Tabitha makes her musical debut and performs a beautiful song for the congregation. She captures the minds and hearts of the churchgoers, and one young man even whips his phone out to film her performance. This is a marked improvement from the church's usual sermons of Beckman recounting the multiple people whose necks he snapped for money. Everyone is very impressed. To celebrate this incredible improvement to the church's lineup, Tabitha and Churchgoer 3 join Beckman for a pizza party.
Pizza!
Ooh, yay!
Churchgoer 3 then unpromptedly starts boasting about her previous sexual exploits again.
I was hot stuff.
Because that is literally all her character amounts to.
Oh, forgive me, Lord. You know, they called me Baby Thunder.
Whoa, too much information.
And before anyone starts to feel the urge to act upon their impure thoughts, the pizza party is rudely interrupted by the movie's gang of bad guys. There's Eric, Janice, Frank, and one of the Baldwin brothers, not sure which one, might be Stephen, could be William. Doesn't really matter, they're all the same anyway. Despite having a gun pointed in his face, Beckman scolds the baddies and even flimsily attempts to attack them several times, yet their response to this doesn't escalate, they just re-threaten him with the same pointed gun. But when Churchgoer 3, who is sat there peacefully, decides to calmly remind everyone that they are in God's house, they pistol whip her around the back of their head. And so Tabitha is stolen. No! We know her so well. She definitely hasn't only been in the movie for literally like 30 seconds. But we really care about her now. Did you not see the time with the year that passed? Beckman grills Shiner about the men he brought to the church, and Shiner explains that he was talking to a new guy at work, asking for advice about girls. And when Shiner showed the new guy the video of Tabitha singing, the new guy must have recognized her. He was then assaulted and forced to give up her location, which explains his mysterious black eye. But it doesn't explain how he already had the black eye at the time he recorded the video, which was shown leading to him getting the black eye. So let's just pretend that linear time doesn't exist anymore and move on, I guess. Oh, also, horny Churchgoer 3 is now dead, so if you laughed a minute ago when she got bounced around the skull, you should feel suitably ashamed and guilty, you horrible rotter.
I'll pay for the funeral.
And so we've reached a significant turning point, a fork in the road. We have our inciting incident. John Wick had his car stolen and his dog was brutally murdered. Aaron Beckman had his friend stolen and a horny lady from his congregation was brutally murdered. And both of them were thrust back into a life of murder. Beckman storms over to his satchel to retrieve a rather menacing flip phone, and after a dramatic moment of deliberation, presses a single button which immediately connects him to the badass flip phone murderer network.
Welcome back.
I could go into how ridiculous that is and make some kind of funny joke about him accidentally butt dialing his way back into a life of crime, or make the observation that he never truly turned a new leaf, as he was always a single button press away from going back to the life he solemnly swore against when being gently bathed by Jeff Fahey. The thing that bugs me the most about this scene is that it really lacks any of the dramatic impact that it believes it has. From the way it's shot and the way it's cut together and the musical stings, it really feels like the creators want us to feel the weight weight of this decision. But if you compare it to its contemporary, or rather the movie it's shamelessly mimicking, John Wick, after managing to escape a life of violence, John literally buried the tokens of his past beneath concrete and has to, once prompted, use a sledgehammer to get through it. It's an aggressive physical display of not only his wrath, but a clear-cut demonstration of the weight of the decision he is making. He really did not want to have to do this, and this adds impact to the entire movie. John Wick sweating, furiously pounding metal against the hard ground to forcibly rip a hole in the earth and awaken the demons of his past, versus David A.R. White angrily flipping open his outdated phone and firmly pressing a single button. And so he's back into the fray, buys intel on his only lead and orders some guns from the network, then charges in to interrogate Eric, but rather than getting any information out of him, he just brutally murders everyone instead. This should have logically left Beckman at a dead end, but luckily for him, Eric's criminal phone that he uses to organise all of his illegal crime activities doesn't have a passcode on it. So Beckman is able to use this to continue his campaign and gives one of the Baldwins a call. The film is laced with this kind of wanky, pretentious dialogue which tries to position these two characters as powerful opposing forces, but actually only serves to make them both sound like complete morons.
Your threats, they mean nothing to me. My future will be as it was revealed to me, as it always has been, solid like iron, unchanging.
You know iron has a melting point, right? That's how we managed to turn it into things? Ooh, I'm unchanging, like iron. One of the Baldwins reveals that Tabitha has already been killed and recommends that Beckman just forget about it and go and do some more sermons or something.
And she's returned to the void.
So predictably, these two titans refuse to come to an amicable resolution over the phone, and Beckman makes a few threats using his best tough guy impression and then prepares for action. But first, he stops off to charge up his new smartphone. If you thought the assassin button on his flip phone was badass, wait until you see the kind of apps he can get on that bad boy. While he's waiting for the painfully slow in-car charger to work its magic, he treats himself to some flashbacks to significant moments over the past year he spent with Tabitha, from holding her hand as she writhes around, suffering from alcohol withdrawal, then to her graduation day where Beckman buys her a new car to congratulate her, and also buys her a guitar, and also buys her a new phone because he's such a lovely, great guy, I guess. Is this grooming? This feels like grooming. He also mentions that he's her dad now?
You being a daughter, me a dad.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
I guess he adopted her. Bearing in mind that all of this apparently happened over the course of a single year? Well, that was a busy year, wasn't it? After pulling off the most obvious phishing scam in history...
Hello?
Hello, sir. I'm Fred Shapiro at the post office.
Beckman manages to get the address of his next target. And who else could answer the door but David A.R. White's best mate and over-actor of the decade, Tommy Blaze? After some more threats and some mild torture, Beckman persuades Janice to take him to the cult who killed Tabitha.
Is she dead?
What is he talking about? Who is he?
But rather than take control of the situation and drag Janice away, he decides to take everyone along on a nice gunpoint road trip. When that inevitably descends into chaos, Beckman wildly unloads his gun and chases Janice off into the woods for a quick game of hide-and-go rock fight. Then, after doing an unnecessary amount of rolling, decides to take a break and have a few more flashbacks. Beckman awakens handcuffed in a grubby basement with some other potential victims and decides to engage in some obviously scripted small talk with Wendy. But before Wendy gets a chance to ask about the weather, the conversation is interrupted by Janice, who has decided now would be a really great time to come downstairs and fill Beckman in on all of the bad guy's nefarious plans, because it's obviously very important that he be kept up to speed with the villain itinerary. Apparently Frank is on his way over, which is nice because we haven't seen him since the kidnapping earlier. Then Janice randomly starts brutally slashing and stabbing Beckman multiple times in the face. What the hell? I really did not expect this movie to be quite so violent. Although I guess if the creators are trying to make the actions of our hero Beckman morally justifiable, the bad guys do need to be worse than him, so I guess they all need to be as directionless and unrealistically psychotic as possible so we can continue to suspend our disbelief enough to think that Beckman is the good guy in all of this. After a bit of a scuffle, Beckman and Wendy somehow both manage to wriggle out of their bindings, and Janice gets punted in the snatch and stabbed in the back and then just sort of scurries off back upstairs like an injured crab. What? Janice sadly dies off screen of knife, and Beckman camps a while and waits for Frank to arrive, but unfortunately he isn't a stupid idiot and doesn't come into the house without calling Janice first. As he drives away, Beckman, in a desperate attempt to lure Frank back into the house, calls him back and tries out his best Janice impression.
What?
After another airheaded conversation of wanky platitudes and threats, Beckman and one of the Baldwins are really gunning for each other now, and in a shocking twist, it's revealed that one of the Baldwins also has a top secret assassin flip phone. OMG! And he puts out a contract on Beckman for $100,000. So throughout this movie, various characters have alluded to the legend surrounding Beckman.
The Koreans, you know what they call him? Agma, the demon.
Clearly trying to demonstrate just how vicious and deadly he is. But $100K? Really? Is that enough of an incentive to inspire the assassins on the flip phone network to come after someone who's so prolific and feared? I mean, the contract put out on John Wick was $14 million, so I guess Beckman's paltry $100K is actually fairly proportionate. I never thought I'd be able to so easily compare different characters' power levels, but I would say that John Wick is roughly 140 times better than Aaron Beckman, so I guess the math checks out. So now we enter Act 3. With the flip phone assassin network on his heels, Aaron Beckman must defy all the odds, kill everyone in his path, and avenge the death of his adopted daughter by some evil, non-Christian cult. Cue some lackluster fight choreography, disappearing bullet wounds, and more incidental female deaths as Beckman batters his way through a series of cash-hungry douchebags, with some of the least exciting combat sequences I think I've ever seen in my life. After taking a bit of a beating, Beckman seems to be in pretty terrible shape and is outwitted and outfought by one of the assassins on his tail. Beckman then manages to somehow talk his way out of having his bounty collected. I don't really understand why, but Mr. Mercy here seems to be a big believer in the legend surrounding Beckman and just sort of lets him go, which is a clear demonstration of exactly what we suspected, that the bounty on him was not high enough. After paying a visit to the laughing old man, Beckman drops off some unnecessary baggage and gets straight back into the grit. After having a couple more sluggish scraps, Beckman tracks down a bootleg Lisbeth Salander to do a quick bit of hacking to help reignite the trail and figure out where the final baddies are located. She also makes sure that we, the audience, are definitely aware that although Beckman is a horrible, ruthless murderer, he is in fact gooder than the other bad people he wants to ruthlessly murder. They are so bad, in fact, that she won't even say what they've done out loud, and she's really edgy and has a nose piercing, so I couldn't even begin to imagine the kinds of sick things that she's alluding to. It must be really extreme. Whoa. Beckman charges up to the front door and absolutely batters the security. I think the choreographer was perhaps ill, or maybe had just run out of ideas, as rather than showing this fight, we just hear fighting noises and get to observe a static shot of some woman's flat reaction to what's happening. In yet another earth-shattering twist, Beckman receives a call from the flip phone network and is told the bounty on his head would be cancelled if he walks away. Contemplating just how little he cares about this threat, Beckman discovers a conveniently placed photo album that neatly displays all of the details of the various accounts of human trafficking and murder that has occurred on these premises, leaving him with no option but to slaughter Frank and make his way to his final stop, one of the Baldwins, who's out in the desert chatting garbage to his brainwashed congregation stood beside some CGI bonfires. After a final exchanging of shallow tough guy platitudes, one of the Baldwins refuses to put up a fight and accepts that it is his time to transcend this mortal realm and patiently waits on his knees for Beckman to shoot him in the face. And it is here, right here, at the thrilling conclusion of this pointless movie, that Beckman has a change of heart and decides not to kill him. Oh wow, really? I didn't expect that at all. This is all Beckman needs for redemption, apparently. Just one moment of mercy to absolve his guilt for a lifetime dedicated to murder. What a saint. Then, in a shocking twist, one of the Baldwins reveals that Tabitha is actually still alive, and he's kept her in one of the barrels? So if you didn't already think that this entire movie was a pointless mess, all of the deaths that have occurred did so for absolutely no reason. Why would he go to such extreme lengths to kidnap Tabitha, to just stick her in a barrel for a bit and then let her go? Why did he lie about killing her in the first place, knowing full well what Beckman Beckman is capable of, essentially setting everyone up to die. And how is Beckman the good guy? From what we've seen in this movie alone, Beckman killed 2 guys that he stole money from, bribed a priest, shot another 4 guys dead in cold blood, stole one of their phones, committed identity fraud, broke into someone's home at gunpoint and tortured them, then hijacked their car, kidnapped 3 people and shot one of them to death. He then shot a woman in the back and killed another man, kidnapped and imprisoned an innocent bystander, then caused the deaths of 2 more men, one with a drill in the eyeball and the other one he strangled to death. Then he aggressively battered a security guard who was just doing his job and shot a club owner to death. One of the Baldwins potentially kidnapped 3 girls and told a lie. And he's apparently the bad guy. Why? Because he's not Christian? And after all of this, just in case you still somehow didn't think this entire movie was completely pointless, as Beckman, our hero, mercifully drives off towards the horizon having saved the day, Mr. Mercy from earlier turns up and shoots one of the Baldwins dead anyway. Please, someone, tell me what the point of any of this is. I beg you.
It's done.
Although this wasn't a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, it's definitely a step in the right direction for David A.R. White, whose previous catalogue is completely unbearable. Beckman is at least semi-competent, but there's still no passion behind this project. There's no underlying purpose or meaning. It literally only exists because David A.R. White said, "I want to do a revenge movie," and then just threw a bunch of money at people to try and make him look good. Shame none of that money was put towards acting classes, as David clearly still has lots of room for improvement. But this wasn't at all aided by Gabriel Sabloff's terrible writing, in which he really failed to flesh out the world of the movie and gave no context or backstory to any of the characters, meaning that everything felt obviously superficial and the story failed to provide answers to any of its own questions. Whenever anyone was asked about a situation outside of the film's own narrative, they simply just didn't want to talk about it.
I don't ever want to talk about it. I don't ever want to talk about it.
This kind of writing is frustrating because of how obviously lazy it is. I know there are no answers to these questions simply because Sabloff couldn't be asked to think of them, and this meant that I didn't care at all about the events that occurred in the movie and empathised with precisely none of the characters. In fact, the only time I really connected with anyone was when I watched the footage from the movie's red carpet event. I was transfixed on the cold, dead glare in Jeff Fahey's eyes. With each passing minute he realised even more that the paycheck he received for this movie simply wasn't worth it. His soul slowly fading away as he stands beside his temporary best friend for the evening, answering a constant barrage of questions that he couldn't give less of a shit about. Still in disbelief that despite receiving second billing in this movie, his character died before the opening credits were even finished. And now finally coming to terms with the fact that his inclusion in this movie was just for marketing purposes, and he is basically a prop, hired by David A.R. White to try and trick people out of their hard-earned cash. I feel for you, Jeff, a little bit, but you've already taken David's crime money, so now it's time for you to go. Subscribe to my fucking channel. Thanks. Hello lovely people, just wanted to let you know that my new series, Junk Game Review, will be starting in the very near future, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of it live over at twitch.tv/cynicsnacks, so I'll be doing some casual chilled gaming streams with some of my creator buddies, maybe some behind the scenes art type stuff. I'm also working on a massive Minecraft project, but that's a bit of a secret for now, and as I said, I'll be working on new episodes of Junk Game Review live there as well. So all of you feel free to come and join me as I uncover some of the worst games of all time.